So I'm here with Butch Patrick. He's an American actor and musician. Beginning his professional acting career at the age of 7, Patrick is perhaps best known for his role as child werewolf Eddie Munster on the CBS comedy television series The Munsters. How you doing today, Mr. Patrick?
I'm doing just fine. How are you, Ryan?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. So I know you grew up in California, like I guess the Redondo Beach area. Can you talk about like growing up in California?
Well, it was I was born in 1953, and I was actually born in a city called Inglewood as an infant, and then the South Bay area, which consists of the beaches, Manhattan, Redondo, Hermosa, but Gardena and Torrance were my actual where I went to school and stuff. I just spent a lot of time at the beach because it was a lot nicer. But yeah, I really enjoyed my childhood. We had a little bit of the 50s and grew up in the 60s with, great music, great times. I couldn't have asked for a better childhood.
And I guess you got into acting because of your sister. Like, you went on a photo shoot with her, and you ended up getting a job.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how I wound up. I only worked in the business 15 years, but for some reason, I did a couple of shows that in that period have stuck around for the long haul as far as like TV icons and stuff. And what happened, my little sister was the target of the camera shoot. I went along for a ride. I was only 6 years old at the time, so mom didn't leave me at home. And when he was done shooting my sister, his name was Amos Carr. And the key to this was he was like the #1 kid photographer in Hollywood. So he took a lot, kind of liked the look that I had. And he says, "Do you mind if I take a couple pictures of your son for my own files?" And my mom said, "Sure." And he took one of the pictures and put it in a window. He had a studio right on Hollywood Boulevard, and a producer and a director, Randy Hood and George W. George, I guess, were walking down the street, and they were casting a movie, and they still hadn't found the youngest brother and the youngest son of Eddie Albert. So they saw this picture and they liked the look, and they thought, well, hey, we'd like to talk to him. And they asked him, and he explained to them that I wasn't an actor. I was just a regular kid that he took a photo of. And they go, well, we still would like to reach out to him. One thing led to another. They tracked me down. I went on an interview. They liked me. They hired me. They gave me my first job. And it was 6 weeks of work with a really good little movie with Jane Wyatt and Eddie Albert, and Brenda Lee and Soupy Sales and Nancy Culp. And by the time I finished that movie, I had picked up General Hospital and a couple commercials. So I just kind of accidentally stumbled into the Hollywood machine, so to speak.
And I guess after that, you started being on a lot of like the popular television programs of the time, from Mr. Ed, the Untouchables, Gunsmoke.
Yep.
What was it like, that experience, like, working on these like roles as a child? Were you cognizant of like, how like, influential these shows would be?
Well, I was watching the shows myself, so it was interesting for me to be a fan of a lot of the shows that I was actually going to participate in. That was kind of cool. And I knew that eventually the money I was making would come in handy someday I wanted to be a race car driver. So some kids wanted to be an astronaut or a fireman. I wanted to be a race car driver. So I thought this money would go a long way towards my hopeful career, which never did pan out. But no, it came easy to me, and it was fun, and my mom seemed to like it, and the friends seemed to like it. So all in all, it was just one of those temporary things that turned into a semi-career until I was about 20 years old. But when you mention a lot of the shows that I did a lot of Westerns, and I enjoyed Westerns because my uncle supplied horses and Western props to the studios, and I could ride a horse because my other uncle was a jockey. So I spent a lot of time at Hollywood Park at the racetrack, and a lot of time out at the farm and the ranch with the horses. So it came in handy that I could ride horses.
Wow. And I guess in 1964, you get a call from CBS, and they want you to come to Studio Center for a screen test.
Yeah, not only did they want me to come, they had to fly me in from Illinois. I was living with my grandmother. They wanted Bill Mumy, and Bill Mumy's mother didn't like the makeup, or they decided not to do it because of the makeup ramifications, which was lucky for me. And then they hired Happy Durman to do the pilot with Joan Marshall, and the network brass saw the pilot, and they still wanted the show, but they wanted to change up the mom and the kid. And that's how my agent got them to fly me in from Illinois. I went directly from the airport to the studio. My mom had moved to Washington, D.C. with my stepdad, the baseball player. So nobody was living in California. And when I got the part, I had to make arrangements to live and get someone to take me to work, which we did. So within 4 days of leaving Illinois, I was in production of doing the Munsters.
Wow. And like I guess your screen test was with Yvonne DiCarlo, and like from there, like and stuff, everything, you're Eddie Munster, like from the whole time of the series. So what was it like working on the series?
Very unusual, one of a kind show, great people, funny. I love the special effects. I love the makeup. I like the cool cars that we had, and of course the house that we lived in was an amazing place. But the best part was being at Universal Studios for a couple of years and being able to, whenever you had free time, you could go explore the greatest studio on the planet and see all kinds of neat stuff going on behind the scenes. That was special.
Wow. Can you talk about like some of the sets and stuff, everything? Because obviously, like now, like I think of like Universal Studios, you have the Back to the Future, so obviously those sets weren't there, but like some of the Western sets obviously would have been in place.
Well, we had Stage 28, if I remember correctly, was the name of it, and it was the Phantom of the Opera soundstage, which was like 6 stories tall, largest soundstage in Hollywood, and that was only about one soundstage over from Stage 32, where we were doing the Munsters. So I used to go explore that. I used to go to the McHale's Navy Lagoon. The Alfred Hitchcock, the Psycho House was there. We had Colonial Street, which had a lot of the houses that you would see on TV, like the Leave It to Beaver house and some other things like that. But anyway, there was always something going on. But my favorite thing to do was to go into an empty soundstage, and when they would start construction, building it out, trying to guess what kind of movie it was going to be, and was it going to be like a period piece medieval castle, or was it going to be a Western, or was it going to be a gangster movie, or you never know, because they make the magic. And it was fun to try to second guess what was happening.
That's awesome. You were talking a little bit about like the makeup. How long did it take for you to get into character for the role?
An hour for me, 2 hours for Fred, and everybody else was between an hour and 2 hours.
Wow. What was like I've read like past interviews where you talked about like you didn't enjoy the shorts. The makeup didn't bother you so bad.
Yeah, the little, well, you're a kid and you're wearing knee socks and shorts, so it's not. I mean, I got used to it obviously, but it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite outfit. As a kid actor, you do period pieces, and sometimes you're wearing knickers if it's 1920s, and I always enjoyed the Westerns because that way you're wearing Levi's and cowboy boots and dirty shirts and stuff, so you can be a kid. But yeah, the velvet shorts I could have done without.
Definitely. Do you have any fond memories of any of the other cast members? I know, like a lot of them have gone to pass on. Like Yvonne DiCarlo and Al Lewis. Can you talk about like what it was like working with them?
They were wonderful. They all had kids about my age. They were very kid friendly. It was a kid friendly set. The producers had done Leave It to Beaver for 6 years, so they were very much into writing scripts that were easy for kids to deal with, and had a lot of kid motivation and kids' point of views. So that was fun. And I learned a lot from them all, different types of things from different people. Fred Gwynn taught me a lot about the acting techniques for our father and son scenes in our shows. And Al Lewis taught me, he taught me a lot about life outside the studio. Yvonne DiCarlo was a great TV mom since my family was living in the East Coast. I was actually closer to the studio family for a few years than I was to my own. So it came out, it worked out very well. The people behind the scenes were great. The makeup, the special effects, everybody. We had a very fun set.
And then the show eventually gets canceled. I guess like you blame Batman being like the reason for why it was canceled.
Well, yeah, that was one. Batman and the transition between black and white and color. I think a lot of it also had to do with the scripts were getting a little tired, and Fred and Al were New Yorkers who had been transplanted to LA. I think they were ready to go back to New York. A combination of several things. But all in all, we had a good run. We were very popular. And let's face it, today, we're on the air all the time, and Batman's not.
Yeah, and you you continued though your acting career after the Munsters. You had like, you know, an impressive like, career. You know, after the Munsters, I guess you started working on Disney World of Colors. Then you did The Young Loner, and then you were a semi-regular on My Three Sons. How was the transition from, you know, acting? Because obviously, like, you wouldn't be necessarily recognizable as Eddie Munster. You think that kind of like, was a blessing, or
Well, I've had, the term, typecasting, and people use that, but they don't really think it through for my situation, because had I been typecast, or they were talking about it, that would be as if I was running, walking around Hollywood in velvet shorts with a widow's peak, carrying a doll, looking for work, which wasn't the case. So actually being under the makeup was great, because you're 11 and 12, you take the makeup off, you're 13 and 14, you're changing almost on an annual basis. You're getting new pictures taken, because at that age, you change every 6 months. So it worked out well for me. I never wanted to be a career actor. I worked till I was like 19, 20 years old, and I was happy to move on with my life, and everything worked out just fine.
And I guess later on you started a band. You had a band in 1983.
Well, you might say that. What happened in 1972 was Butch Patrick had a record career with Metro Media Records. After I did Lidsville, some guys at Claridge Music wanted to create another David Cassidy when Bobby Sherman was let go of Metro Media Records. So to replace Bobby Sherman, they groomed me to do the band that they had was called Sugarloaf, which was a big band with Green Eyed Lady and Don't Call Us, We'll Call You. And anyway, it was a solid touring act, and they wanted to create a teeny bop star. So they picked on me, and I told them I don't sing. It's not what I do. I have a terrible singing voice. They, it doesn't matter. We'll fix it in the studio, which they did. And I went on and did American Bandstand. But the bottom line, in not being able to perform live, it was difficult to do a music tour. So I was original Munster Manili. Long before Milli Vanilli was lip singing, I was lip singing my little heart out. And then in '82, when the MTV came on the air, yes, we did create Eddie and the Munsters for rock videos, is what we wanted to do. We needed to have a vehicle to show off our rock video talents, and we decided to do Whatever Happened to Eddie, which was a song that I wrote, and it actually got a lot of notoriety. We were the first unsigned act ever to be on MTV, so that worked out really well. It was kind of fun, and people still remember it today. And it's I like to think that we helped a lot of unknown talent get their break, because up to that time you really had to have a record deal, and you had to have a pay for play situation in place before you could get any exposure. And MTV started the basement tapes from the concept of an unsigned act, submitting a video.
Definitely. And I guess you had though like a passion though for fast cars, like you were talking about, and then in surfing. Can you talk about like stuff, everything you love for those two activities?
Well, as growing up in the '60s, best decade for music, best decade for muscle cars, best decade for movies and TV. So my window of being 7 to 17 in the '60s was a great time. Literally I turned 16 in 1969. So what a year. If you kind of had to be there to remember it, literally. So people that weren't there, it's hard to explain. But yes, George Barris, drag racing, going to George's shop, having cool cars. I grew up on go-karts and dirt bikes and mini bikes and all that kind of stuff. And it was it was just an extension of my childhood. And as soon as I was old enough to drive, and got a cool car, and then faster cars, and yeah, I like cars. And I have a Munster coach and a Dragula, and I just bought an Eddie Munster Harley from a club member brother of mine. I'm a member of a very cool club called Dead Man's Curve out of New Jersey. So yeah, I'm having a really good time. I travel, I meet people, I deal mostly with automotive events. Right now I'm in Indianapolis at a convention called Days of the Dead, which is a lot of fun. And I'm here with Richard Dreyfuss and Alice Cooper and Tony Todd and Danielle Harris, and just all the who's who of the horror movie genre. I'm right next to Bill Moseley, Rob Zombie, he's in all Rob Zombie movies. And of course, Rob Zombie is now making the new Munster movie. Right. So I'm getting a lot of exposure because of that.
Right. Like I've heard about that. Like I don't think like there's much details about like, you know, when it'll come out, like but like it's supposed to be on Universal and Rob Zombie's cast as some of the actors. Is there possible you'll make a cameo in that?
Can't tell you.
Okay,
Secrecy. You'll have to wait, just
for
like
sure.
everybody else. But it's going to be good. He's got a very, very good hold on it, and he's got a very good concept going. So I couldn't be happier for him and for the franchise and the Munsters and myself. So it's all good.
Definitely. What's next for you, Butch?
Well, that's interesting. I have a YouTube channel called Coach to Coast right now, which allows me to travel around the country and interview people and interesting things from the road. But I'm switching it up to a new one in August called All Things Munster, which will include interviews with people like I'm gonna do an expose #1, obviously on Rob Zombie because of the Munster movie. He'll be starting it off, and then the George Barris angle because of my Munster coach. Macabre Theater is a show that's been on the air the last 20 years out of California with actually Ivana Cadaver hosts it. We created it together, and I'm coming back in to be her co-host again. It's on YTA Network, Macabre Theater, and then I've actually got a couple of small movie parts coming up. People have been reaching out to me to do independent films, and I try to accommodate them whenever possible. I don't go on auditions again, but I do reach out. I just finished one called Old Man Jackson in Houston. I have another cameo coming up in a movie in Charleston. I'm going to do, if you go to Munsters, the easiest thing to do for your fans and your viewers is to go to munsters.com, and you can see my schedule. It's very hectic. It's very extensive, and it's actually filled up pretty much through almost to Christmas.
Wow, Butch. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy your work, and continue supporting watching your films in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and I'm sorry it was a little difficult to get us together, but hey, we made it happen.
Most definitely, Butch. I appreciate you.
Bye-bye, my friend.
Have a good one.